So the backlog in the Western Cape SAPS Forensic Service laboratories now sits at more than 100,000. The DA discovered that a number of robotic DNA machinery had been out of use since 2019 because they hadn't actually been serviced. The party has since alerted the Commission for Gender Equality with the view of putting pressure on national government to try and intervene. For more on this, let's bring in the DA spokesperson on social development in the Western Cape, that's Gillion Bosman, who joins us now via our video link. Gillion, great to see you. Thanks very much indeed for making time. So this is a long-standing issue, and you reckon all it takes to fix it is just servicing this machinery?
Yes, thank you and good morning, Ayanda. It is such a simple issue, and it's an issue of management which the National South African Police Services in Pretoria has failed to look into. For years, this DNA story has gone on because of the issue of a lack of budget. The budget is now there, but the supply chain management processes have not been put in place to actually service these machines. And these are highly specialized robotics machines that allows the warrant officers and the scientific officers working in the biology section of the lab to process DNA samples faster, meaning that people who have been victims, and specifically women who have been victims of gender-based violence crimes, can have those specimens properly analyzed and ready for court so that those cases can proceed. But it's purely a management issue, not making sure that supply chain management contracts are in place for this to actually happen. And it's been going on since 2019.
And how did this information become available to you?
The Western Cape Provincial Parliament Standing Committee on Community Safety conducted a oversight visit to the lab to see what some of the issues are on the backlog. Right. And when we were touring the lab and also being presented with information by the divisional commanders on site, this is what came to light.
I'm sure during that tour you must have been asking questions around why the machines had, I guess, been left like this since 2019. What kind of answers were you getting?
Well, I personally asked about 25 questions, and the head of the forensics side from Pretoria could not answer why there were no term contracts in place and why negotiations with the Treasury hasn't taken place to make sure that the specifications for these tenders are completed. The staff at the Plattekloof lab have indicated that they've tried to find workarounds to ensure that staff are manually able to process some of these samples. But if you take a walk around the lab itself, you will find boxes and boxes of samples stored everywhere. And we're actually very worried about the quality of these samples degrading over time, meaning that victims of gender-based violence will not get the justice they deserve because the quality of evidence will not be able to stand up to the rigorous court process.
Yeah, the insult to injury here, of course, is that it was the police minister, if my memory serves me well, who stood before Parliament and conceded all manner of things to give the impression that they were really taking this issue seriously. The evidence before us is obviously telling a different story.
It is indeed, and I think it's an indictment on the hard work that is done by ordinary men and women in the police service, where they're constantly being failed by senior management and by the political leadership at SAPS, because if this money is not used in this financial year, the Treasury will take it away. We've been promised that the machines are getting the attention they deserve, but once those machines are serviced, we also then need to make sure that the reagents that is used in this chemical process is also available, and that's another tender that needs to be put in place. And interestingly enough, this forensic science laboratory in Plattekloof has had 5 divisional commanders in the last 3 years, and none of them have been able to solve this problem. And if you think of the salary of a divisional commander, you think of the salary of the commissioner for police as well as the minister, we could have solved this problem if we just had competent management in place.
The backlog, we're told, is at 100,000. Help us put that into perspective. I mean, what was the figure before? And I guess how long has this kind of urgency, if you like, been there?
So if you look at it from a sort of timeline perspective, in 2016, the backlog was just over 5,000. In 2018, it was 2,600. And then in December 2020, it was 74,000. And the latest figures we have is for May 2021, and the backlog is now at 107,000. And that is just DNA samples that are at this lab. We don't know what is happening at the labs in KwaZulu-Natal as well as at the labs in Silverstrom in Pretoria. So at the moment, we've got people manually attempting to sort of work through this backlog. But as you know, COVID has hit all manner of government services very hard, and this lab is also operated only on a certain part of its personnel being there due to social distancing concerns.
Sure. Really concerning. You are now looking to the Gender Equality Commission for some kind of intervention. What are you hoping they will do?
Well, what we've done is, in my capacity as chairperson of the Standing Committee of Social Development, I've written to the Commission for Gender Equality, and I've asked them, in terms of Section 11 of the Commission for Gender Equality Act, to look into collaborating with either the Human Rights Commission or any other competent constitutional body to see if they can put some pressure on SAPS to solve this issue. Because in the Democratic Alliance, we've pushed this issue from the National Council of Provinces, we've pushed it in the National Assembly, and we constantly push it in the committees on social development and community safety in the Western Cape Provincial Legislature. But there's only so much feedback that we get from SAPS, because what we also hear is that the Western Cape SAPS, their hands are tied, because the forensic science lab in the Western Cape is actually not under the management and control of the Western Cape Police Commissioner. It is under the control of the police in Pretoria. So we're hoping that the Commission for Gender Equality would be able to get more information and also be able to put Treasury and the South African Police Service in the same room so that they're able to look at how do you actually solve this problem, because it's a long-term problem and you need a long-term tender, because there are only so many suppliers that can service these machines. And perhaps what it calls for is for SAPS to look at how it procures this type of service. It should perhaps be an in-service department that looks at managing these machines, because it's a critical part of processing DNA samples.
Gillion Bosman, thanks very much indeed for your time and letting us in on what you know. We really do appreciate it. Gillion is with the Social Development Department in the DA in the Western Cape. Once again, thanks very much indeed for your time.